The Vanishing Shadows. David, Sarah, Mark, and Lisa decide to take a holiday trip to explore an old, deserted town they heard about from a travel blog. The town, known for its spooky tales and abandoned buildings, promises an adventurous experience. They arrive in the late afternoon, excited about the thrill of exploring an untouched, mysterious place. The first night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the deserted town, David, Sarah, Mark, and Lisa gathered dry wood and lit a campfire in the center of the town square. The flickering flames cast eerie, dancing shadows on the crumbling facades of the surrounding buildings. The atmosphere was thick with an unsettling stillness, the kind that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. The buildings around them were relics of a time long past, their walls cracked and weathered, windows broken and dark. Vines and ivy crawled up their sides, reclaiming the structures with nature's slow, relentless grip. The once bustling town now stood as a haunting reminder of life abandoned. As they settled around the campfire, toasting marshmallows and sharing ghost stories, the crackling of the fire was the only sound breaking the oppressive silence. The air grew colder, and an unnatural fog began to roll in, enveloping the town square in a ghostly shroud. Without warning, a figure emerged from the shadows. The old man, his face lined with age and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of countless secrets, appeared as if he had stepped out of the very fog itself. His sudden presence startled the group, causing them to momentarily fall silent. "Leave this place," he rasped, his voice carrying a tone of urgent warning. "Before it's too late." David, ever the skeptic, exchanged a bemused look with Mark. "Why should we leave? We're just here for a bit of adventure." The old man shook his head slowly, his expression grave. "You don't understand. This town, it's cursed. Many years ago, the people who lived here vanished without a trace. Their souls are trapped, unable to move on. The shadows you see at night, they're not just shadows. They are the lost souls, seeking new ones to take their place." Sarah, intrigued but still doubtful, leaned forward. "What happened to them? Why did they disappear?" "The town was once vibrant, full of life," the old man began, his voice almost a whisper. "But something changed. A darkness fell upon this place, something evil that we could not comprehend. One by one, people started disappearing. At first, we thought they had left in search of a better life. But then, strange things began to happen. Shadows moved on their own, whispers echoed in the night, and those who remained were filled with an overwhelming sense of dread. One night, the remaining townsfolk vanished, leaving behind their homes, their belongings, everything. Since then, no one who has stayed here after dark has ever been seen again." Lisa shivered, glancing nervously at the encroaching darkness. "That's just a story to scare people away, right?" The old man's eyes bore into hers, unblinking. "Believe what you will. But heed my warning. Leave this place before night fully descends, or you may never leave at all." With that, he turned and vanished back into the fog as silently as he had appeared, leaving the group in an uneasy silence. For a moment, they were all too stunned to speak, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. Mark broke the silence with a forced laugh. "Well, that was spooky. But come on, it's just an old man trying to scare us. We're here for the adventure, right?" The group chuckled nervously, trying to shake off the lingering unease. They resumed their conversations, though now their laughter was a bit more forced, their eyes occasionally darting to the shadows around them. They tried to enjoy their evening, but the old man's warning had planted a seed of doubt and fear in their minds. As the night deepened and the fire burned low, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Shadows seemed to stretch and move with a life of their own, and the once comforting campfire now felt like a fragile barrier against the encroaching darkness. Ignoring the old man's warning, they remained in the town square, unaware that the true horror of the deserted town was only just beginning to reveal itself. As the eerie night deepened, the group decided to split up and explore the enigmatic town, each armed with a flashlight and a growing sense of curiosity, tinged with the old man's ominous warning. The thrill of discovery was too enticing to resist, and they ventured into the unknown, each heading in a different direction. Sarah wandered into a decrepit house at the edge of the town square. The wooden floorboards creaked under her feet, and cobwebs hung like ghostly drapes in the corners of the rooms. Her flashlight beam cut through the dust-filled air, revealing remnants of a life long forgotten, an overturned chair, a broken mirror, and shelves lined with old, tattered books. Drawn by a peculiar feeling, Sarah approached a small wooden desk near a shattered window. Amongst the debris, she found an old leather-bound diary, its cover worn and edges frayed. She carefully opened it, and the pages, brittle with age, crinkled under her touch. The diary was filled with frantic, almost illegible writings. As she read, a chill ran down her spine. The entries spoke of the shadows, describing them as entities that moved with an eerie intelligence, always lurking just beyond the reach of light. The writer's fear was palpable, their words growing more desperate with each entry. "I can hear them whispering in the dark," one entry read. "They are watching, waiting. They want our souls." Another entry, dated the night before the town's mysterious disappearance, was almost a frantic scrawl. "The shadows are here. I can feel them closing in. This might be my last entry. God help us all." Sarah's heart pounded as she flipped through the pages, each entry more terrifying than the last. She felt an overwhelming urge to leave the house but was too entranced by the diary to move. Sarah wandered into a decrepit house at the edge of the town square. The wooden floorboards creaked under her feet, and cobwebs hung like ghostly drapes in the corners of the rooms. Her flashlight beam cut through the dust-filled air, revealing remnants of a life long forgotten, an overturned chair, a broken mirror, and shelves lined with old, tattered books. Drawn by a peculiar feeling, Sarah approached a small wooden desk near a shattered window. Amongst the debris, she found an old leather-bound diary, its cover worn and edges frayed. She carefully opened it, and the pages, brittle with age, crinkled under her touch. The diary was filled with frantic, almost illegible writings. As she read, a chill ran down her spine. The entries spoke of the shadows, describing them as entities that moved with an eerie intelligence, always lurking just beyond the reach of light. The writer's fear was palpable, their words growing more desperate with each entry. "I can hear them whispering in the dark," one entry read. "They are watching, waiting. They want our souls." Another entry, dated the night before the town's mysterious disappearance, was almost a frantic scrawl. "The shadows are here. I can feel them closing in. This might be my last entry. God help us all." Sarah's heart pounded as she flipped through the pages, each entry more terrifying than the last. She felt an overwhelming urge to leave the house but was too entranced by the diary to move. Meanwhile, Mark and Lisa explored a larger building that seemed to have once been a community center. The structure was partially collapsed, with beams of moonlight piercing through gaps in the roof. As they moved cautiously through the halls, their flashlights revealed glimpses of faded murals and scattered furniture. In one of the back rooms, they stumbled upon something unusual. The walls were covered in strange symbols, crudely carved into the plaster. The symbols were unlike anything they had ever seen, and as they illuminated them with their flashlights, the carvings seemed to glow faintly, emitting an eerie, otherworldly light. "What do you think these mean?" Lisa whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Mark shook his head, running his fingers over the carvings. "I have no idea. They look ancient. Maybe there's some kind of warning." As they examined the symbols more closely, they noticed that some of the carvings formed a pattern, almost like a map. In the center was a symbol that resembled an eye, surrounded by what looked like tendrils or roots spreading outwards. Lisa shivered. "This place gives me the creeps. Maybe we should head back to the campfire." Just as Mark was about to agree, they heard a faint whispering, almost too quiet to make out. It seemed to be coming from the walls themselves, the voices intertwining in a chilling, melodic chant. They exchanged frightened glances, their earlier bravado fading quickly. David, meanwhile, ventured into what appeared to be the town's old general store. The shelves were still stocked with dusty, long-expired goods, and the air was thick with decay. As he moved through the aisles, his flashlight beam flickered, casting unsettling shadows that seemed to twist and move with a life of their own. In the back room, he found a series of old photographs pinned to a bulletin board. The pictures showed the townspeople, smiling and going about their daily lives. But as he looked closer, he noticed something disturbing. In the background of several photos, barely noticeable at first, were dark, shadowy figures. They seemed to blend into the surroundings, but their presence was unmistakable. David's breath caught in his throat as he realized the figures were identical to the descriptions in Sarah's diary. The shadows had been there all along, lurking in the background, unnoticed by the townspeople until it was too late. As David was about to leave, he heard Sarah's scream pierce the silence. He bolted out of the store, flashlight in hand, his heart racing. He found Sarah standing in the middle of the street, the diary clutched to her chest, her face pale with fear. "They're real, David," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "The shadows, they're real." Before David could respond, a sudden, bone-chilling cold enveloped them. Sarah's flashlight flickered and went out. In the darkness, David could see movement, shadows detaching from the walls, growing and shifting, inching closer. In a heartbeat, Sarah was gone, her scream echoing into the night. David was left alone, her flashlight lying abandoned on the ground, its beam flickering weakly. David, now consumed with terror, ran to find Mark and Lisa. He burst into the building where he had last seen them, calling their names. He found them huddled together, staring at the glowing symbols, their faces masks of fear. "We need to get out of here, now!" David shouted. But before they could move, the whispering returned, louder this time, surrounding them. The shadows on the walls began to writhe and reach out, like dark tendrils seeking to ensnare them. In a horrifying moment, the shadows engulfed Mark and Lisa, pulling them into the darkness. Their terrified screams echoed around David, who was powerless to save them. As quickly as it had begun, the room fell silent, and David found himself alone, surrounded by the chilling remnants of his friends' last moments. Desperate and terrified, David knew he had to escape the cursed town before he too became one of the Vanishing Shadows. But as he fled into the night, he could feel the darkness closing in, the shadows ever watchful, waiting for their next victim. As the night deepened and the oppressive darkness closed in, David found himself alone and terrified. The fleeting shadows at the edge of his vision seemed to grow bolder, skirting closer and closer, their cold presence palpable. His flashlight flickered weakly, its beam struggling against the encroaching gloom. Stumbling through the abandoned streets, David's breath came in ragged gasps. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of wood seemed amplified in the stillness. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure emerge from the shadows, the old man who had warned them earlier. "Why didn't we listen?" David's voice cracked with desperation. The old man's eyes were filled with a mix of pity and resignation. "This town is cursed, as I tried to tell you. The shadows are the souls of the vanished townspeople, trapped between worlds. They were once like you, seeking adventure, but now they seek new souls to replace them and break their own curse." David's mind raced as the old man's words sank in. "Is there any way to save my friends? To end this curse?" The old man nodded slowly. "There is a way, but it is dangerous. The diary you found holds the key. The symbols Mark and Lisa discovered are part of an ancient ritual that can free the trapped souls. But you must act quickly, before the shadows consume you too." With renewed determination, David raced back to the abandoned buildings where his friends had disappeared. Clutching the diary tightly, he flipped through the pages, searching for any clue on how to perform the ritual. His hands trembled as he read the frantic writings, piecing together the steps needed to break the curse. The diary detailed a ritual involving specific materials, a circle of salt, candles placed at precise intervals, and a chant that must be spoken at the stroke of midnight. David hurriedly gathered what he needed from the remnants of the town. He found salt in the old general store, candles in a nearby house, and positioned them in the town square, the very heart of the darkness. As he worked, the shadows grew more aggressive, their whispering voices growing louder, almost deafening. The air grew colder, and David's flashlight flickered out completely, leaving him in near-total darkness. He struck a match to light the candles, their small flames casting long, eerie shadows. Standing in the center of the salt circle, David began to recite the chant from the diary. His voice shook, but he forced himself to continue, pouring all his willpower into the words. The shadows swirled around him, reaching out with tendrils of darkness, trying to breach the protective circle of salt. As David neared the end of the chant, the air crackled with energy. The shadows hissed and recoiled, but their assault grew fiercer, driven by desperation. Just as the clock struck midnight, David spoke the final words of the ritual. A blinding light erupted from the center of the town, a pure, radiant glow that pushed back the darkness. The shadows screamed in agony, their forms disintegrating in the light. The energy surged through the town, sweeping away the fog and the malevolent presence that had lingered for so long. When the light finally faded, David found himself alone in the eerily quiet town. There was no sign of his friends, the old man, or the shadows. The town, bathed in the pale light of dawn, looked almost peaceful now, a stark contrast to the horrors of the night. Heartbroken and exhausted, David walked through the empty streets, the weight of his loss pressing heavily on his shoulders. He had saved the souls of the townspeople, but at the cost of his friends. The memories of the previous night haunted him as he made his way back to civilization. David returned home, a changed man. The experience had left deep scars, both physically and emotionally. He was haunted by the loss of his friends and the chilling memories of the shadows. The once vibrant and adventurous spirit within him was now tempered by a deep, unshakable sadness. The deserted town remained a silent reminder of the dangers that lurk in forgotten places. David vowed never to return, but the shadows continued to haunt his dreams, a constant reminder of the night he lost his friends to the Vanishing Shadows. Every time he closed his eyes, he could still hear the whispers, see the flickering shadows, and feel the cold, unrelenting darkness that had almost claimed him.